All right, let's dive right in, shall we? We're going deep on Baby John, that new Bollywood action flick with Varun Dhawan.
Lots of buzz around this one.
Yeah, our listeners send in a ton of reviews, so clearly people are trying to figure out, is it worth the watch?
And it's tricky, right? Because the reviews are all over the map.
Totally. Like, Bollywood Hungama gave it a decent 3.5 stars out of 5.
Not bad, not bad.
But then you've got the Indian Express and Midday.
Oof, yeah. They were not fans.
Not even a little bit. They both gave it a 1 out of 5.
Rough scores.
So maybe we should back up a bit. For those who haven't been following the Baby John saga, what's the movie even about?
Okay, so it follows this guy, John D. Silva, an ex-cop who's trying to live a quiet life with his daughter in Kerala. You know, bury the past, all that.
Classic action hero setup.
Right. But of course, the past never stays buried. His identity gets revealed, and he's pulled back into a confrontation with this vengeful criminal, Nanaji.
So we've got action, we've got revenge. Sounds pretty standard so far.
True. But here's where things get a little more interesting. Baby John is actually a remake of a 2016 South Indian film, Theory.
Oh, right. I'd heard about that. That one starred VJ. Huh.
Exactly. So now you've got this whole other layer of expectation and comparison going on.
Yeah, remakes are always walking a tightrope. You want to appeal to fans of the original, but you also need to bring something fresh to the table.
And some critics are saying Baby John doesn't quite manage that. Like, Bollywood Hungama mentioned the plot feels a little dated, a little formulaic.
Interesting. It does make you wonder if Bollywood is relying a bit too much on remakes these days.
Maybe. But hey, a good remake can still be a great film in its own right.
Absolutely. Speaking of good and great, let's talk about Varun Dhawan. He's mostly known for comedies, right?
Yeah, so this whole action hero thing is a big departure for him.
Did he pull it off?
Well, even the harshest reviews acknowledge that he gives a strong performance. It seems like he's really serious about proving he can do more than just comedy.
Love to see actors pushing themselves. But okay, you can't have an action movie without action. What do reviewers say about the action sequences in Baby John?
Get ready, because it sounds like they went all out. Explosions, crazy fight scenes, a soundtrack that'll blow your eardrums. One reviewer even compared it to a full-on assault on the senses. They even mentioned a scene with a pencil going through someone's ear just to give you a sense of how over-the-top it gets.
Wow. Okay, so over-the-top action check.
Yeah.
What about the villain? Does he match that energy?
Oh, absolutely. Jackie Shroff plays the villain, Nanaji, and he completely embraces the whole evil mastermind vibe.
Nice.
At one point, he actually calls himself the Lion King.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And later on, he even claims to be God.
Wow, talk about an ego trip. So we've got explosions, a larger-than-life villain, Varun Dhawan flexing his action muscles. Anything else we should know? What about a romantic subplot? Did they try to squeeze one in there?
They did, but the reviews weren't exactly raving about it.
Ah, too bad.
Apparently, the romance between Varun Dhawan and Kirti Suresh feels underdeveloped. Like, it lacks the emotional depth you'd find in, say, Gajini.
That's disappointing. A well-done romance can really add another dimension to an action movie. But wait! We can't forget the big talk surrounding this film. The Salman Khan cameo as Agent Baijan. Did it live up to the hype?
Seems like it was a hit. The reviewers all pointed out how entertaining it was, and some even hinted that it could lead to a whole Agent Baijan franchise in the future.
Oh, interesting.
Apparently, Salman even makes a joke about becoming a dad someday.
That's funny. Okay, before we go down the sequel rabbit hole, let's get back to Baby John. Were there any other standout moments or performances worth mentioning?
Definitely. Critics had good things to say about Kirti Suresh. This is actually her Bollywood debut.
Oh.
And Wamika Gabby's performance also got some positive attention.
Nice. Glad to hear there are some strong performances in there, even amidst all the explosions and mayhem. But sometimes it's those little unexpected details that really stick with you after a movie. Did any of the reviews mention anything like that about Baby John?
Actually, yes. A few reviewers mentioned these really self-aware, almost meta moments in the film.
Love those.
For example, Rajpal Yadav's character has this line about how comedy is serious business.
Haha, classic.
And then there's this line from Satya where he says something like, "There are many like me, but this is my first time."
Ooh, I like that.
It feels like a nod to the fact that we've seen this kind of archetypal action hero so many times before.
Right, like they're winking at the audience a little bit.
Exactly.
But let's be real, not everyone was totally on board with the Baby John train.
True. Some critics found it a bit too much.
In what way?
Well, one review called it bloated and incoherent. Yeah. They said it relies too heavily on cliches and tropes we've seen countless times before, and they specifically called out the overuse of ships, docks, and containers.
Oh, interesting. Why those in particular?
They felt it was too similar to other recent films, like Pushpa. They basically said the movie lacked originality.
I can see that. It's always a letdown when a film feels derivative.
Right, but what one person finds derivative, another person might find comforting or familiar.
That's true. It's all subjective in the end.
Exactly. It's all about what you're looking for in a movie.
Speaking of what you're looking for, you mentioned some pretty intense action scenes earlier. Did any reviewers express concern about the level of violence in Baby John?
Some did, yeah. Some reviewers felt the violence was excessive, even gratuitous. They described scenes of people being carved, burnt, and trampled.
Yikes.
Yeah, pretty graphic stuff. And one reviewer even worried about the impact this level of violence could have on viewers, especially children.
That's a valid point. Action movies often walk a fine line.
It's a tricky balance.
You want to create excitement and thrills, but you don't want to desensitize viewers to violence.
Right. And it's interesting to see how different reviewers grappled with that aspect of the film.
Yeah, because some people might be totally fine with it, while others might find it disturbing or off-putting.
Exactly. It's a reminder that movies are subjective experiences. What one person finds entertaining, another might find upsetting.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears for a bit and talk more about the characters. You mentioned that Kirti Suresh makes her Bollywood debut in Baby John. What were the reviews like for her performance?
It was a mixed bag. Some critics praised her screen presence and felt she made a strong impression, but others felt her character was underdeveloped.
Oh, that's too bad. It's always a bummer when a talented actor gets stuck in a role that doesn't really let them shine.
Right. And there was a sense that she wasn't given enough to do, which is a shame because she's a really talented actress.
Hopefully she'll get more opportunities to showcase her skills in future Bollywood projects.
I agree. And speaking of standout performances, Wamika Gabby also got some positive feedback.
What did people like about her performance?
Reviewers appreciated her energy and screen presence, even though her character's backstory wasn't really explored in much detail.
Interesting. So even though the movie has all this action and chaos, there were still some performances that managed to stand out.
Definitely.
Okay, but let's be honest. We can't talk about Baby John without addressing the elephant in the room. Or maybe I should say the tiger in the room, Jackie Shroff as the villain, Nanaji.
Ah, yes, the infamous Nanaji.
So tell me about his performance. Was it as over the top as his character sounds?
Oh, definitely memorable. Critics described him as menacing and unhinged, but also almost comical at times.
Oh, that's interesting.
One review even compared it to his villainous role in the 2010 film Aranya Kundam.
Huh, haven't seen that one.
Yeah, the reviewer kind of implied that Baby John didn't quite use his full potential as a villain.
It does sound like he was having fun with the role, though, right? Especially with that whole Lion King and God thing we talked about.
He definitely embraced the theatricality of it all, and sometimes a bit of over-the-top villainy can be really entertaining.
Totally. But some people prefer their villains to be a bit more nuanced, right?
Yeah, some reviewers felt his character could have been more psychologically complex.
Makes sense. So I guess it depends what you're looking for in a villain. Do you want a brooding, complex antagonist or someone who just revels in their evilness?
Exactly. It's all a matter of taste.
So we've covered the performances, the action, the villain. What about the overall message or themes of Baby John? Did any of the reviewers pick up on anything beyond just a typical good versus evil story?
Well, the film is actually dedicated to fathers, and that whole fatherhood theme runs throughout the movie.
Interesting.
The bond between John and his daughter, Kushi, is clearly meant to be the heart of the film.
Makes sense, considering the title is Baby John.
Right. And reviewers definitely kicked up on the sweetness of their relationship, even amidst all the violence and chaos.
But did they find it particularly effective or moving?
The opinions were mixed. Some reviewers found it heartwarming, while others felt it got lost amidst all the action and melodrama.
It's hard to strike that balance sometimes.
It really is.
You want to deliver those high-stakes thrills, but you also need those quieter, more intimate moments to really connect with the audience.
Exactly.
Okay, speaking of connecting with the audience, what about the humor in Baby John? You mentioned those meta moments earlier, but did the reviewers find the film genuinely funny overall?
It sounds like the humor was kind of hit or miss.
Oh.
Some reviewers enjoyed the self-aware jokes and those little playful references, but others felt the comedy felt forced, especially considering the more serious themes.
That makes sense. It's always tricky trying to blend different genres. Finding the right balance between action, drama, and comedy isn't easy.
Especially in a film like Baby John, which seems to be pulling inspiration from all over the place.
So we've talked about the good, the bad, and the maybe not so good of Baby John. But the big question is, did the critics think it lived up to the hype? Was it a worthy remake of Theory? Did it successfully launch Varun Dhawan's action hero career?
Well, like we said, the reviews are all over the place. Bollywood Hungama gave it a positive review, praising the entertainment value and Varun Dhawan's performance. They acknowledged the challenges of remaking a film like Theory, which came out almost a decade ago.
But I'm guessing not everyone was so forgiving.
You're right. The Indian Express, Midday, and The Telegraph were a lot less impressed.
Yeah, those were some pretty harsh reviews.
They criticized the reliance on cliches, the excessive violence, and the convoluted plot. Some even went so far as to call it one of the worst films of the year.
Oof, that's gotta sting.
Definitely. But even bad reviews can generate buzz and get people talking.
True. But it sounds like Baby John is a pretty divisive film. Some loved it, some hated it.
That seems to be the consensus. It definitely provoked some strong reactions.
And that's not always a bad thing. A movie that gets people talking is at least doing something right, even if it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Exactly.
And ultimately, the only opinion that really matters is your own.
That's right.
But it's always helpful to get a sense of what the critics are saying before you decide whether to spend your hard-earned money on a movie ticket.
Absolutely. Reviews can offer valuable insights, spark conversations, and help us be more discerning viewers.
So even if Baby John isn't a cinematic masterpiece, it sounds like it's still a film worth discussing, debating, and dissecting.
I completely agree. And who knows, maybe it'll become a cult classic down the line.
Stranger things have happened.
You never know.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's bring this back to you, our listener. You've heard what the critics had to say, you know the basic plot, and you've gotten a glimpse into the behind-the-scenes drama. So, what's the verdict? Is Baby John worth adding to your watch list?
Tough call. I mean, it sounds like one of those movies you kind of have to see for yourself and decide.
Yeah, like if you're a die-hard Varun Dhawan fan or just craving some pure action entertainment, you might have a blast.
Right. But if you're looking for something with a fresh story, well-developed characters, thought-provoking themes,
Maybe not the best choice.
it sounds like Baby John prioritizes spectacle over substance.
All flash, no substance.
Kind of. Big explosions, crazy stunts, but not a whole lot to chew on afterward.
That's a shame. Because there are hints of something more interesting there. You know, that father-daughter dynamic, those meta moments.
Totally. And the potential for a more complex villain.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what the film could have been if they'd taken a different approach.
Maybe they'll get it right in the sequel.
Ooh, speaking of sequels, that Salman Khan cameo has definitely gotten people talking about an Agent Baijan franchise.
Oh, for sure. With Salman Khan's star power, it's not hard to imagine Agent Baijan leading his own series.
And remember that detail about Salman's character joking about fatherhood? Feels like they're already setting up future storylines.
Totally. Planting those seeds early, smart move.
Okay, but let's not get too sidetracked by sequel possibilities. We were talking about the heart of Baby John, that father-daughter bond. It could be a really nice emotional anchor amidst all the action.
You're right, it has that potential. But it sounds like the romance between Varun Dhawan and Kirti Suresh falls a bit flat.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, because this is Kirti's big Bollywood debut.
Exactly. And she's a talented actress. Hopefully she'll have more chances to shine in future roles.
Fingers crossed. Okay, so it sounds like Baby John has its ups and downs. Maybe not a masterpiece, but potentially a fun, mindless action flick, if that's what you're in the mood for.
Exactly. It all comes down to personal preference.
Right. Like, do you enjoy over-the-top action? Are you a Varun Dhawan fan? Are you curious to see how he handles this action hero role?
Those are the questions you need to ask yourself before hitting play.
For sure. But here's one last thing to consider. We've talked a lot about Baby John being a remake. Is that automatically a bad thing?
Good question.
Like, does Bollywood need to focus more on original stories? Or is there space for both? What do you think?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
On the one hand, there's something really exciting about originality. You know, a brand new story, a fresh perspective.
Totally. There's that thrill of discovery, of being surprised by something you've never seen before.
Exactly. But on the other hand, there's also something to be said for reimagining a classic. Taking a familiar story and giving it a new twist.
Right. It's like that saying, everything old is new again. And a remake can introduce a beloved story to a whole new audience.
That's a good point. Like, someone who's never seen Theory might watch Baby John and totally fall in love with the story.
And they might go back and watch the original.
Exactly. It could create this chain reaction of movie discovery.
I like that. So maybe there's room for both original stories and reimagined classics to coexist in Bollywood.
I think so. It's all about finding that balance, making sure both get their time to shine.
Right. Because ultimately it comes down to the execution. A good remake, whether it's based on a South Indian film or anything else, needs to bring something new to the table.
It has to respect the original, but also stand on its own 2 feet.
And that's a tough balance to strike, isn't it? To honor the source material, but also create something unique and engaging.
It really is.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into Baby John, we'll leave you with this. Think about what you value in a movie. Originality, entertainment, a thought-provoking message.
Weigh the pros and cons, think about what the critics have said, but in the end, trust your gut.
If Baby John sounds like your kind of movie, give it a shot.
And if not, there are tons of other films out there waiting to be discovered.
Right. And hey, maybe this whole remake debate will spark some interesting conversations of your own.
We love to hear it.
So until next time, happy watching.
Yeah, it can be tough. It's a really delicate balance.
So as we wrap up our deep dive on Baby John, maybe we should just put it out there. What do you value in a movie?
Right.
Is it originality? Pure entertainment?
A strong message.
Yeah. Weigh the pros and cons, see what the critics are saying, but
ultimately,
trust your own gut feeling.
Exactly.
If Baby John sounds like your kind of film, go for it.
And if not, hey, there are plenty of other movies out there.
Tons of them. And maybe this whole remake conversation will spark some of your own thoughts.
Always good to get people thinking.
So, until next time.
Happy watching.